Hello lovely people, this week I'm doing another book chat, the regular but not monthly roundup of what I've been reading recently.
Sophie Vlogs.
I have a handful of books to talk about this week and I'm just going to dive into it, starting with The Mighty Dead, Why Homer Matters by Adam Nicolson. I read this as part of Nonfiction November. I hadn't finished it when I recorded my Nonfiction November video. It's currently like start of February, by the way. This is going up way later, so it's going to look like I've been very shoddy, but I've been less shoddy. I finished it a while ago. Essentially, this is all about Homer, why Homer matters. This was a different book from what I expected it to be, I think. I think for some reason I was expecting this to be a lot more to do with relating Homer to our current time and being like, why does Homer still resonate with us contemporarily? I'm not saying it doesn't do that at all. It absolutely does. I think it did it in a different way than I expected, is what I'm trying to say. So this looks at a whole breadth of things. I think some of the things I found most interesting was there's a chapter on gangs, which was weirdly interesting. I think essentially I enjoyed this. I didn't love it as much as I expected. I think what stopped me loving it as much as I expected was some chapters I was like, oh yes, this is what I want, and then a couple of other chapters I was like, it's fine, it's just, they didn't engage with me as much. I definitely would recommend reading this if you're into, like, classical studies, why Homer is relevant, blah, 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 blah. I think it was just not what I thought it was going to be. It was like a solid 3 out of 5. It was, like, solid good. It didn't, like, blow my mind, but I did thoroughly enjoy it. After that is The Keeper of Lost Things by Ruth Hogan. My mum lent me this book to read, but it was already on my radar because Leah over at Leah's Dudish read it and wrote a review about it on her blog, and then Charlie at Charles Heathcote did a review of it as well, and so they followed in quick succession to each other, those two reviews, and I was like, well, it's on the pile, I'm gonna have to give it back at some point this year. I need to try and get a bit quicker at reading books that are lent to me, and I was like, right, this is my moment, the world is telling me, read it. And I liked it. I think Charles in his review like got it spot on because he said it was a very cozy read, and it absolutely was a really cozy read. It's about this guy Anthony Perdue who is an author and he collects lost things, and he has a whole room full of them labelled with when he found them, any relevant details, etc. And then he's getting very old and he passes on to Laura, who is sort of she comes in and she helps him around the house and stuff like this. He passes on to her the duty of taking care of these things, but also seeing if you can reunite these things with their owners. Again, this was also not quite what I expected. I did enjoy it. It was again a solid 3 out of 5 book for me. It was cozy. It was frivolous. There was like a romance aspect of this which I didn't hugely care about. Not to be cruel, like it was fine. It didn't bother me. It's just I wasn't hugely rooting for them. It flashes back between, you have contemporary times with Laura doing these things, and then there's also a storyline which is set in the past, which runs up to present, and then which takes you a little while to figure out why it's also included, like how it relates. And I think I actually enjoyed that storyline the most out of this. But yeah, it was entirely cozy, and I wanted like a cozy, lovely read, and this really ticks those boxes. Third book is Just Kids by Patti Smith, which I have been meaning to read for ages. I think I set myself to read this one in 2017 and I didn't read it, so now that it's the start of 2018 for me, not for you, but for me, I was like, let's read that. And I really liked this. It was one of those books where this is about Patti Smith, the singer, and her relationship with Robert, and them essentially like when she moved to the big city as like, I think she's 17. I read the thing, I can't remember her age, what it. And so like her early years before essentially before Horses came out and she hit the big time. So it's all like the both of them while they were struggling artists, and it was just really interesting. It was a real snapshot of a time. Like, the amount of names that are just casually in this, that is just like, oh yeah, and then I bumped into Janis Joplin, and you're just like, of course you did. So it's a really interesting look at like a particular time. And if you're someone who is an artist who creates art, stuff like that, I think I would really recommend you read this because there is a lot to do about creating art and all of that sort of deliciousness. So this was really good. I really enjoyed this. I read another autobiography which was lent to me by my friend, which was Coming Up Trumps by Jean Trumpington, which I don't think I would have picked up myself, but my friend lent it to me and said, you'll enjoy it. Baroness Trumpington, if you don't know, is a Conservative politician. She was in the House of Lords. I think she's just stepped down from the House of Lords. If you want to find out more about her politics, this is not the book for you, because it doesn't talk about that at all. Which was kind of okay, because I am not a supporter of the Conservative Party, of which she is a member, so I think we're probably politically quite different people. That being said, she writes a perfectly enjoyable autobiography, because she's had one of those lines, slightly in a similar way to Patti Smith. There's just these names casually dropped. I will say that I feel like Patti Smith's name dropping is more authentic than Jean Trumpington's was. Jean Trumpington's had a lot of like just names dropped but not really gone anywhere with. It was just like, oh yeah, I see this person when I have my hair cut, and I'm like, oh great, lovely. She managed to be present at lots of interesting times and places. So she was at Bletchley Park in the war, and then she worked in America for a while, and that was really interesting. So she's just been in very interesting times. I will say her perception of what losing all your money is like is not a reality one. Like there's a moment like her family's, when she was younger, her family lost a lot of money in the stock market crash essentially. They had to downsize a lot of stuff, blah blah blah. But how this affected them is that although one of their children could go to Eton, they had to send the other one to Dartmouth Naval College, which like, woe is me. So what I'm saying is there are some moments which, to enjoy this book, I think you have to go in aware of the fact that this is a very wealthy woman, and telling her life experiences and stuff. Otherwise I think some of the things could be like a little irksome. But I personally, as just like a light autobiography, found it just perfectly enjoyable. Again, another 3 out of 5 star book. So after that is my favourite book of the bunch, I think. And that is The Lions of Al-Rassan by Guy Gavriel Kay. This is another book which I set myself to read in 2017, which I didn't read, and then I read it in 2018 instead. Just like really, sticking to those goals. This did what every Guy Gavriel Kay book that I've read so far has done, which is make me try not to cry on public transport. So what Guy Gavriel Kay does is he writes fantasy books, but they are based on real historical times and events. That's where the like similarity ends, like character-wise. So like some of the figures in this are based on real people, but they are not supposed to be those people in this book. They are their own character. They're just sort of like inspired by real historical people. I was not familiar with the time or place that inspired this. It's Spain in sometimes, I now can't remember. I think if anything I probably enjoy his books more not reading about the time they're about until after I've read them, because otherwise I might be like, this is not what happened, I don't know. Don't have any of that, just immersed myself in this story. He did what he always does, which is we have multiple plot lines, which are all going their very merry ways all over the place, and then they all get woven together, and they all come together in this climactic moment. And I personally, Guy Gavriel Kay books get me. I feel like, from what I've heard from people who've read them, people either tend to love them or hate them. So I can kind of understand how these books might not be, the ways in which they might not suit some people. I love them. He does this thing which I really like, which everyone's sort of shades of grey. We've got people on all sides who we love. But when it comes to conflict, not all of these sides can succeed, because someone's got to lose, and you get these heart-wrenching moments when people you love are going up against people you also love, and it's absolutely like gets you in your soul, and it puts me on tenterhooks when I read it. I absolutely love it. My absolute like peak moment when I was reading this of like being on tenterhooks is that there is a scene, and we know that someone has just died, but they are not referred to by their names. And at that point, my bus got to my stop, I had to get off my bus, I had to start work, and I couldn't read it again until the end of the day. And the whole day I was just there like, but who has died? And it was stressful. So shades of grey are explored a lot in his books. He also does this gorgeous thing where I don't normally, when you say love triangles, I'm not into love triangles insofar as, you know, classic love triangle, Twilight books. There's Bella. Bella's person A. Edward's person B. Edward loves Bella. Jacob as person C also loves Bella, but these people don't like each other, but everyone loves this one. Whereas Guy Gavriel Kay does stories in which, like, B and C might love A, but they also love each other. Take that however you will, not necessarily like romantically, but there are like deep bonds of love that tie these people together. And again, like, can this exist, or will there be, and the conflict that arises from that, because a lot of the time it's not possible for that to just coexist as a thing. Make your people polyamorous, goddammit. Like, there's just, I'm rambling, because he makes me feel all of the feels in delicious world building with wonderfully engaging characters. This has a lot to do with exploration of different religions. Can different religions coexist peacefully? The implication being that when they find ways to coexist peacefully, that is the best outcome, but it shows the ways in which that is often not possible due to, like, prejudices and conflicts arising because of it, and holy wars and all stuff like this. There's this whole thing. It just took me on a journey. It was really emotional. This is why I tend to read like one of his books a year, because they get me so much. I have to space them out over a couple of months. I have to be like, okay, I need to wait like 3 months before I read another one, because otherwise I'm gonna like emotionally combust. It was great. After that, like, slowly getting more nonsensical ramble, I think I'm gonna call it a day here. Those are just all the things that I've read in the most recent period. Let me know what you've been reading recently. Let me know if you have thoughts on any of these things I've talked about. Just have a chat about books. Book chat is in the title. A chat, book chat, yes. Okay, I've just flustered myself with too much Guy Gavriel Kay talk, so I'm gonna go, and I hope you have a really nice day, and I will see you next week.